the doctor told them that your leg would have to go off because of gangrene. So Varden, being the hardcore ranger he was, he told the doctor that if he woke up and his leg was gone, he guaranteed that the doctor's head would be gone. So the doctor said, okay, I'm telling you right now, if we leave that leg on, you're going to die. He said, I'll take my chances. So today, Varden's still walking around on two good legs. And the doctor, probably, if he's still alive, has his head. How do you feel when you get drafted? You wanted to know, right? You don't feel good about it at all. Because I was in college, and then I dropped out. I figured I'll drop out for a semester. I'll make a lot of money working, then I can go back and continue my education. Well, as soon as I dropped out, that summer I was drafted. Needless to say, my mother and father weren't happy about it because I was their only son, and the last thing they wanted for me to was, to go in the army because they knew where I was heading. Back in those days, if you were drafted, the chances of you avoiding Vietnam were real, real small, unless you had a specialized skill, which is what I had. And I'll give you a little side story here. When you go in the army, they try to find out if you do have some specialized skill because they don't want to send in everybody off just to be cannon fodder. So when I was interviewed when I got there, they said, "Well, do you have any special skills?" I said, "Yeah, well, I've been playing the piano for 20 years." They go, "Oh, you're a musician." I go, "Yeah, I'm a musician. I play the piano." They go, "Well, you can join one of our 20 different Army bands." I go, "Well, you don't have a piano." They go, "Well, you can read music, can you?" I go, "Yeah, well, you can do the drums or something. Or the xylophone, whatever. You'll be fine." They go, "You have any other specialized skills?" I said, "Yeah, I can type 50 words a minute." They said 50 words a minute. My God, you'll be a company clerk. So you don't have anything to worry about. You'll either be a company clerk or you'll be in the Army band, one or the other. You're fine. Don't even worry about the infantry or Vietnam. So during my basic training, one day these guys from airborne school came in there and wanted volunteers for airborne. And the first thing I did was raise my hand. Take me. I want to go. So they said, all right, sign him up. So at the end of basic training, they put up all the job classifications for everybody there. And I noticed mine didn't say Army band or company clerk, it said infantry. So I said, what happened? They go, didn't you sign up for airborne? I said, yeah. They go, when you sign up for airborne, that means you're gung ho and you're crazy and everything else gets negated and they put you right in the infantry. So my dream of being a company clerk or in the Army band banging a drum went down the drain right then and there because I signed up for airborne. Because I figure if you're crazy enough to sign up for that, you belong in the infantry. So I hurt myself. What a dummy. I had no one but myself to blame. I could have been just typing away in Washington, D.C. with all these other guys. Huh?
I got a ton of offers to go to college, but my grades were terrible. And so I went to a junior college to try and boost my grades up to where I could get accepted. And I did. And I was able to go to a couple of different schools. Never could figure out what I was doing other than athletics. Anyway, I ended up in a small Division II school here in Oregon and played football and basketball and did well. And it came down to spring term. The draft was in full effect, and it brought a lot of fear to a lot of young men in the States in those days. And everybody, if you went to school, you could get a student deferment, and it kept you out of the draft. And I went along with that until spring term. I believe it was 68. I had way too much fun, partied, and flunked out of school basically and lost my student deferment. went to work that following summer and came home from work one day, and there was the dreaded letter from the selective service system saying that Uncle Sam wants you. So I was pretty much devastated by that, and it was all due to my own doing. So my father is he was such a patriotic man. He was a good man, and I could not let him down. So off to the army I
Well,
went.
you'd have to go all the way back to 1954. And that's when the French, who owned Vietnam at the time, they used to call it French Indochina. The French lost a big battle at Dien Bien Phu, and they lost 10. Their garrison of 10,000 men surrendered, and then they probably lost 5,000 just in the march to the POW. It was like the Bataan Death March all over again. They lost countless men on the way to a prisoner of war camp. And then the French negotiated a treaty to get out of Vietnam. So we should have taken note right there that this is a place you want to avoid. The French got thrown out on their heads. They lost thousands of men. But for some reason, back in those days, communists was the enemy of mankind, and we always thought it was the domino theory. If one country went communist, the rest of them would fall in line. They called it the domino theory. So for some reason, JFK decided we were going to at least go in there with some advisors and try to prop up their government in the South. And we'll never know if JFK was going to expand the war. I don't think he would have. I think when the president of South Vietnam got assassinated, I forget his name. I think his name is Diem, Diem. Then we put in our own guy. We got our own puppet government in there. And I think he felt bad about that happening. The CIA, I think, was in on the assassination, or at least helped, aided and abetted it. I think JFK would have pulled us out of there. But for some reason, after he got killed, LBJ thought it was JFK's fervent desire to win in Vietnam, and he put in Westmoreland as the commanding general. And all Westmoreland wanted was more men. Every 5 minutes, he was calling up LBJ. We need another 100,000 men. We need another 100,000. In fact, give me another 100. Throw in another. It was just kept going on and on and on. Until we had close to 600,000 men there. By that time, Johnson was banging his head against the wall because we already had lost like 40,000 dead, and everybody in the country was going crazy about it. Because number one, it had no strategic importance at all to our security here in the US. None, zero. It might as well have been fought on the moon. It was 10,000 miles away. The enemy had no capability of attacking us whatsoever. We had got in under idiotic circumstances. Well, I don't know if you remember the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where supposedly the Vietnamese had fired on one of our ships, and we had responded, and Johnson was able to get what they call the Gulf of Tonkin resolution passed in the House and the Senate, where everybody signed on with it, saying we can now attack Vietnam. So it was never a declared war. It only had this one resolution. And to top it off, we had the wrong guy in command. Westmoreland was, as I used to say, he was no Duke of Wellington. No. He was the exact opposite. He didn't know what he was doing. He had a spit-shine uniform and spit-shine boots, and he looked like he was still in World War II. He looked like the Judd George commander from D-Day, but he was never, excuse me, he was never out in the field. He never got his uniform dirty. He'd only show up for a photo op after the action was done. He had no connection with the troops whatsoever. So he didn't lead by example. He was really just, all he did was call up LBJ and want more men to throw in the meat grinder. And he thought we could win by attrition. The more enemy we kill, the better off we'd be. And that wasn't the case. The enemy was going to stick it out. They didn't care about losses. They really didn't. If they lost a guy, that's a tough break for them, but they would soldier on. If they lost 100 men to every 10 of us, they didn't care. To them, it wasn't a war of attrition, it was a war of survival. They had the home field advantage. It was their home. They were defending their home turf. As far as they were concerned, we were invaders. But still, despite all of that, Kathy, when you're in a shooting war like this, the goal is to win. That's the goal. Whether it's in a moral war or more, you have to really search around to find a moral war. Except maybe for World War II and Hitler and people like that trying to take over the world. You look at all the battles and wars we've been in ever since and before and after, it'd be hard to find what we would call a moral war. They're all bad news, every one of them, and a lot of them are totally avoidable. Vietnam was right at the top of the list for avoidable wars. But once you're in the war and you've lost X amount of men, you really want to make it worth your while to be in you at least want to be able to plant the flag and say, we won. The last thing you want to do is lose 60,000 men or 58,000, which was what we lost, and then turn tail and get out of there, which is what we did. So I got assigned to an infantry unit, a regular infantry company. And in the 12 days I was with that company, I probably saw as much action in that 12 days as I did for the rest of my tour, including Hill 809 and every other thing. Okay. It was an absolute disaster. In that short 12-day period, our company lost, I think, 20 men and about 30 wounded in just a 12-day span.
We called it humping the bush. We started going on missions. And, we carried our rucksack, had your life on your back, basically. It was probably 70, 80, 90 pounds, depending on the mission. And, you had to have 20 bandoliers of ammo. You had to have at least 7 or 8 quarts of water, which is very heavy. We didn't eat hardly at all, maybe 1 or 2 meals while we were out there. It was all freeze dried. We called them lerps. Anyway, and hand grenades and explosives and batteries for the radio, ropes, just everything that you can imagine to keep you alive for 6-7 days in the bush. And it is quite an art to move through the jungle with 80 pounds of stuff on your back, trying to not be known by anybody.
So if you went in there, you took your life into your own hands. It was very dangerous. There was enemy soldiers everywhere. It was like a cat and mouse game. And the valley floor was elephant grass, 10-foot high elephant grass. So you really couldn't see what was in front of you or behind you or to your flanks. So you really had to take it very careful in there. So we were going to do this big operation. There was a road that, just to back up one little bit, there was a road that went right through the valley, Route 9, and there had been trucks rolling down that road at night. And we were going to have an operation to ambush an enemy convoy. So in order for this mission to be good, we had to have what they call a radio relay team on the next ridge line over on a mountain next to it. This happened to be Hill 809. A radio relay team is a regular ranger team, and all their job is to take messages from the team in the valley and transport them back to the rear. Because the radios we had back then could only go, unless you're on a hill, they were only good for about 5 miles. If you're on a hill, they were good for 20 miles. So in a mission where you're in a valley, like the Asher Valley, you needed a radio relay team on an adjoining mountain to get your messages back to the rear. So if anything happened, you could call for help. Well, what happened in this mission was we put a whole half of a company in the valley. We put one 6-man ranger team on Hill 809, and the enemy decided that they were going to go after the radio relay team for two reasons. Number one, if they could knock out our communications, and number two, when American soldiers are in trouble, we send the cavalry to go rescue them. So they knew if they hit our radio relay team, that American forces would send everything they could to try to rescue them, and then they could have a pitched battle at their own convenience up there, where didn't have to worry about a ranger company or a platoon down the valley. They could concentrate on attacking this team and anybody else that was coming in to rescue them, ambush them, as they say. So that's how the battle got going. The radio relay team got hit really bad. The team leader got wounded. He got hit 4 or 5 times, by the way. He's still alive, too, amazingly. But so they decided to send in a 1-man wrecking crew. That was Vaden, my old team leader. He volunteered to go in and take over as team leader because the team leader, his name was Durin, was the guy who got hit. But what happened to Vaden was he got hit as soon as he arrived. So then they decided to send in what they call a ready reaction force. That means a platoon of infantrymen from the nearby Cav outfit. They went right. They hit right into an ambush. Then another uh, ready reaction force landed. They were under fire. There was pretty much we had lost like 10 guys out there. It took them 2 days to get to the guys on the hill. Okay, and then by the time they got there, these guys hadn't had any water for a couple of days, no food. They were pretty much on their last legs. By the way, there was a couple of helicopter missions that went out there to try to get the wounded. 2 helicopters, actually 3 helicopters, ended up getting shot down. A whole helicopter crew got wiped out. Another 2 pilots got killed, and one was severely wounded. And 2 of their crew members got killed. So it all added up to about 20 Americans ended up getting killed in this operation, and about 25 wounded. 2 missing in action. But the enemy probably lost 100 men, Kathy, because the guys on the hill who were fighting for their lives were pretty much in a pitched battle the whole time they were there, and they were knocking off enemy soldiers left and right. The enemy tried to kind of wipe them out. They didn't think they could put up much of a fight, and these guys did, and they killed a lot of them. Then the gunships came in to give them some support. Those are the Cobra gunships that fire miniguns. They wiped out a lot of the enemy soldiers. And then at the end, when it was all over, the commanding general of the 101st, I believe his name was Tarpley at the time. I think. I'm not 100% sure. I had to look at my notes. He decided to drop a B-52 strike on Hill 809 and just wipe the whole thing off the map. And we were thinking, gee, that would have been a good idea at the start. We wouldn't have to go through all of this. But he gave the Rangers about 2 hours to get off the hill. And Ole said, we want to at least give it a shot to try to find our PO, not POWs. One of them actually was a POW, but but we didn't know. He wanted to find our guys who were missing. So the general gave him an extra hour or two to try to find the missing in action guys, which they never were able to find. So they extracted everybody off the hill, and then they pretty much blew the hill to smithereens. Looked like the surface of the moon when they were done. Excuse me. And any enemy soldier that was in a half a mile, they would have been dead just from the concussion. So the enemy probably lost at least 100 men. That's a conservative estimate, okay? I'm sure they lost a minimum of 100 men. And so when you really analyze it, in fact, in my book, I do analyze it. I call it a victory for the U.S. because we killed a lot more of them than they killed of us. By the way, the two guys that were missing in action, one ended up being a KIA. Another guy was captured by the enemy, and luckily for him, they took him off 809 before they dropped the B-52 strike. So he survived. And he showed up at a reunion and no one even knew he was alive. So he got a great reception at one of our reunions. His name was Sako Malo. He was a Samoan guy.
So he came back and asked for volunteers, and there was no way that I wasn't going to go get my team leader because he'd saved my bacon many times. So I was first one with my hand up. So we got 5 guys, and he wanted to go in that night, try and go up there. We got inserted in the afternoon, all kinds of fire. The helicopter ahead of us got hit with an RPG. There was a lot of things flying in the air that day. So this is day 3. Here's all these guys out there on a hill in Vietnam, no water, no food, nothing, no, just trying to survive the insects and a lot of bad guys shooting at them. Anyway, so the next morning we cranked up that hill real early, and we got a couple guys got shot on the way up, but I was yelling my team leader's code name when I got up close, and he said, "Down here, you big, put your words in there, whatever you want to say." And so I dove off the side of the hill and got to him, and he had a can of peaches in his hand, and he didn't have a P38 or a knife with him so he could open it, and he'd been looking at it for 3 days, and he was he, he has he's got that Canadian dry sense of humor. He's a funny man to this day. Anyway, so he just told me, he says, "Open up this bleeping can of peaches for me, will you?" So I did, and I gave him my water, and I looked at his leg, and it didn't smell good, and it didn't look good. I cleaned it out, bandaged it, and I kind of set it. I hope I did, but anyway, we got him all squared away, and then I had to turn around to the battle, and we did a lot of things that day. We threw a lot of hardware at those bad guys, and finally, the thing that got us was we had an A6 fast mover come in with a 250-pound bomb, and it eliminated their little nest. It really it scared the bejesus out of me. I promise you, it lifted me off the ground probably a foot. It wasn't very far away. Anyway, so that ended that little skirmish, but it had just begun because we lost during the second, probably the first night, second day, 2 of the Rangers from the original radio relay, James Champion, who is on my bracelet, and Isako Melo, they probably tried to go get help, but they got captured. And Melo came back when they released the prisoners in 75. They'd marched him all the way up to Hanoi Hilton, and we never have found Champion. They've finally declared him. I don't know. I think he's on the wall now, so that means they declared him dead. But I still carry his bracelet with me. Just it's part of my deal.
By the way, the enemy was firing at these guys from trees. They were actually up in trees, shooting down at us. And when Dave and Ole, and I think Quigley was with them, Dave Quigley, when they finally got to the survivors on Hill 809, they found some enemy bunkers. And there were 2 enemy soldiers who were actually, chained to their bunker. Chained, yeah. So either That's something we had never seen before. Now, the reason they would change was maybe they were disciplinary problems, and this was their punishment, or the enemy decided these guys volunteered to stick it out no matter what and just stay there and keep fighting until the end. These guys were both dead, but actually they got burned to death because they dropped some napalm on them. So they were pretty much burned to death. But they were chained to their bunkers, and we had never seen that before. So we probably surmised that they were probably disciplinary problems, and this was their punishment. They were going to have to stay behind and sacrifice themselves, kill as many of us as they could. The doctor told them that your leg would have to go off because of gangrene. So Vaden, being the hardcore ranger he was, he told the doctor that if he woke up and his leg was gone, he guaranteed that the doctor's head would be gone. So the doctor said, okay, I'm telling you right now, if we leave that leg on, you're going to die. He said, I'll take my chances. So today, Vaden's still walking around on two good legs. And the doctor, probably, if he's still alive, has his head. The six of us were lucky that we all didn't lose our heads, to tell you the truth. We came very close to getting wiped out a number of times, but luckily for us, we kept our mouths shut. We hid. The enemy didn't exactly know where we were. They had an inkling. One night they were throwing rocks up in the air to try to hit us on the head so we would make a noise, but we stayed silent. And we had a lot of missions like this. Some of our scariest missions were ones we didn't even get in contact with, but there was enemy soldiers all over the place. I mean, literally, we could almost reach out and grab them. The jungle is so thick. If a guy is 5 meters away from you, he might not know you're ever there, as long as you don't make a sound. Huh? So we had one mission. I could literally punch the guy in the head. Not really, really, just punch him in the head. So we had mission. There was another mission where I don't know if he told you this. This was in the valley. We had camped right next to Route 9. We were going to set off some claymore mines. And this is in the middle of the night, Kathy. 4 trucks came down the road and they stopped right in front of our position with about 100 enemy soldiers on them. And all 100 enemy soldiers got off the trucks. So we thought, we're dead. They know we're here. We were just about ready to blow the clackers, blow the mines, and run for our lives. And then we heard a whizzing sound. They were all taking a piss. They got off the trucks right at this point for a piss break. So they all took a piss and then got back on the trucks and rode away. So we all breathed a sigh of relief. We thought we were completely dead. We thought this was it. We'll never get out of this one alive. Unfortunately, the elephant grass doesn't stop bullets. It's great for concealment, but it's not good for cover, as they say. Okay. So we were very lucky to survive that one.
It was late in the day, and we left 3 guys, and 3 of us we called it a point recon, where we went around our area so that we could find a way to get out if we got in trouble. And we started, my team leader was in the middle, Donnie was up front, and I was pulling slack. And we went over this hill, and they were looking to the right, and I looked left, and here's a bunch of NBA coming up the hill. They were 30 feet from me. They weren't very far. And they were carrying water from the stream down below up to their camp. And I shot them, and there was a lot of them. And that meant that we had to turn around then to get back to our other 3 guys. So I was in front, and we kind of got together, and they started throwing grenades at us. And I saw one coming, and I laid down on top of my team leader and got a bunch of shrapnel in me, and it pissed me off more than anything. And so we got back to our 3 guys. They were coming after us, and it was a heck of a day. we were on a hill, and I'll never forget this. The fog was coming in, and if the fog got up to where we were trying to get out, the bird couldn't come and get us. So it was coming. We could hear it, and I was using my M79, which is a grenade launcher, and it wouldn't give away your exact position. You could poop, and I could shoot a grenade at them. Uh, you didn't want to shoot your rifle because that would pinpoint where you are. Anyway, so we got the helicopter. We got just a little bit of a place to get us out, but the hill was like this. So the chopper pilot couldn't get all the way down because his blades would have hit. So he could get so far. So if you were up here higher and got on, you were good. But if you came up that other side, you had a long stretch to reach. And Whitmore, he wasn't very tall. He was probably 5'9", maybe 5'8", and skinny Alabama boy. And he went off. He was trying to get in on the other side, and the chopper pilot said, "You guys got 5 seconds to get on this bird, and I'm out of here." And so we jumped on, and I'm bleeding. I'm wounded, and and Scotty's he's hanging onto the skid, and I was very strong in those days. I got to tell you, and I told Vaughn to hang on to me, and I just leaned out there and I grabbed him by his rucksack and I just flipped him into the bird. And after that mission, they gave me another Silver Star. One thing about this war is we could take ground, but the powers that be always pulled us back to our comfort zone, and they would just come and take it back. There was no, that was one thing that we all talked about, and it became a something that, I think it kind of like by osmosis, we figured out that we weren't there to win a war as much as we were there to try to keep each other safe.
Our American troops down south, a lot of them fought against what they call the Viet Cong, the VC. Those were different soldiers. Viet Cong is not regular army. They're kind of like guerrillas. They're kind of militiamen, okay? They're not as organized. They're not a real army like the North Vietnamese army. There's a difference between the NVA and the VC. And a lot of the American public have never figured that out. They think it's all just one enemy. It's not. They didn't even have any helmets, and their weaponry was pretty slipshod too. They had weapons left over from World War II and things like that. They had a few mortar pieces here and there and a few RPGs. There's like a bazooka, but they were ill-equipped, ill-trained, and it could be a guy or a girl, as a matter of fact. If you've seen the movie Full Metal Jacket, at the end of the movie, there's a girl shooting at the Marines. So the Viet Cong could have women, old ladies, kids, anything. Anybody who wanted to fight against us. Well, if you've been in combat, doesn't matter, I don't say we're different. If a guy was in combat in Afghanistan, I mean, real serious combat, or in Iraq, places like that, there's not too much difference between us and them, except we're a lot older, maybe supposedly wiser. That's debatable. The guys who weren't out in the field, or people who avoided the service 100%, I know I'm different from those guys. And it's not that I resent them, but I do resent when they start talking like they know something about Vietnam or war in general, or start waving the flag around like they represent the U.S. or something. I'll give you an example. Bruce Springsteen. He's a self-admitted draft dodger. He took enough drugs to kill himself when he went to the draft board, acted like a crazy man, and made sure that he got a deferment because he was mentally unstable because he didn't want to go. Now, why would he do any singing about Vietnam or waving the flag like he represents the U.S.? And as far as I'm concerned, when his country called, he was hiding under his bed. with the other draft dodgers. That's all he is, a draft dodger. He's not the only one. My mother and father and my girlfriend at the time picked me up at Logan Airport in Boston, took me out for a nice dinner, and that was it. Then we drove back to Providence, Rhode Island. And my mother and father were very happy I came back alive. They were happy. They gave me a hero's welcome. My girlfriend was happy. Unfortunately, I found out we got along a lot better when I was 10,000 miles away, but that's another story. And so my mother and father were happy, but that was it. You had to get on with your life and on with your life. And I got to tell you, Kathy, I didn't even think about Vietnam for a couple of years after that. It just, I was able to what I'm looking for. Put it in the back of my mind. That's what I did. And I didn't really think about it for many years. I didn't have any PTSD or anything like that until many years later when it finally kind of hit me. And it hit me when we had our first reunion in 1986, 15 years after the fact. And I remember I didn't want to go to the reunion. I thought, who wants to see those guys? But then I said, yeah, why not? I could take a couple of days off. So I went to the reunion. I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which is right outside of Clarksville, Tennessee. And I remember on the airplane back, heading back to Los Angeles, I was crying. It finally hit me when I was flying back. I started to cry on the airplane. And luckily, no one was sitting next to me because I would have been embarrassed about it. But I remember it really hit me hard, seeing those guys again after all that time. We were hit what we would call stifling indifference. It was like we had never gone anywhere. If you mentioned to somebody I was in Nam, they go, oh, great. And then that would be the end of the conversation. There would be no reaction. It was like, who cares? So what? Too bad for you. Sorry about that year lost in your life. I mean, there was nothing, literally nothing, just in total indifference. And we learned to accept that. That's just the way things were. What I didn't like, and what most combat veterans don't like at all, is guys like John Kerry, who badmouthed all the Vietnam veterans, saying we're all a bunch of drugged out, marauding baby killers, committing war crimes the whole time we were there, and then exonerating himself, saying, "But I didn't do any of that, but everybody else did." He did so much to badmouth our reputation, just completely ruined it. So most of the people now, when they think of Vietnam veterans, they think of baby killer and Lieutenant Calley and torching villages and executing prisoners, all because of John Kerry and his Winter Soldier hearings, and Jane Fonda too. The stuff that she got away with in North Vietnam, sitting in an anti-aircraft weapon and aiming it at our own planes. She should have been arrested for treason, but I don't know how she got away with that. I really don't. Even now, I'll walk into a room or at a party and I'll look around and I'll think, I'm probably the only guy that was in combat in this entire room. And if some way Vietnam does get mentioned and I said, yeah, I was there, they all stop and stare like, wow, you were there? None of the other guys were. We're a very, very small minority, especially the guys who were in combat. There's a lot of guys that were in Vietnam weren't in combat. For every guy in combat, there was at least 6 or 7 guys supporting him that weren't in combat. Now, when I say combat, I mean infantry guys in the field and also the guys who were in the helicopters who brought them out, picked them up, because those guys were in the fire a lot too. So all the guys that were door gunners on helicopters and helicopter pilots under fire, I consider all those guys combat too, all of them. Okay, because they lost a lot of guys. We lost a lot of guys in helicopters and lost a lot of people in that area too. We lost, like I mentioned, we lost 106 helicopters during Lam Son 719. That doesn't mean everybody in those helicopters got killed. A lot of the guys were wounded. Some of them were killed. So those are guys I consider combat veterans. but we are definitely different because we know that we were able to go out there and fight for our country. We had the guts to pick up a rifle and fight for the country, and a lot of other people did everything they could to avoid it. So, well, if you were in Vietnam and you didn't see any action and you were back in the rear, you don't really know what war is all about. You know what being away from home is all about. You know what being in the army is all about. You might even saw an artillery round come flying in once in a while, but you don't. There's a big difference between the guys. I in my book I mentioned there's two different types of people, men from that era. The guys who are in combat, number one, and number two, everybody else. That's how I define it right there. Every guys who are in combat, they're over here. Everybody else over there.
When I was growing up, I had everything I needed to succeed, and here I got caught in Vietnam, and it changed me in a lot of different ways. I when I got back, no one really. I mean, it was like, wow, where you been? I'd say, away, and they go, wow, yeah, glad you're back. That's it. You never discussed it. It wasn't anything that there was a lot of guys that when they got home, they took their uniforms off and never put them on again because, I know that when I came home, I went through San Francisco and they were spitting on us and everything else down there, calling us all kinds of names, baby killers. And, it was, the country was in a real uproar about Vietnam and John Kerry, those guys that Jane Fonda. There's a lot of people that were not veterans. A lot of them don't like those people because of what they stood for, and we were just doing what we were told. We weren't. It was not like we made a choice to go over there and fight. I mean, that's just what in those days. I was patriotic. I mean, I got flags around here. I mean, I, I'm as patriotic as anybody could ever be, and I love my country. And so for that, that affected a lot of people. Affected a lot of people. I've been through a lot of counseling and probably been asked that question a million times. Probably the fact that I didn't get to go to the Super Bowl like the Iranian hostages did. They gave them a parade, and we just didn't get any thanks. There was nothing for what we did. When I got out, drowning my sorrows, trying to medicate yourself to numbness. So my kids, I have two boys. I ended up raising them myself. Probably the best thing to ever happen to me at an earlier age, and they taught me a lot of patience and a lot of love, and it was we survived together. But I was a mess for quite a while. Uh, I lived out on the river for a while. Didn't No one knew where I was. I did that kind of thing, and then I got into drugs. I did a lot of marijuana and did a little bit of cocaine, but that stuff scared me, so I was smart enough to stay out of that. But responsibility, once you get it with your children, it kind of makes it happen. So I started turning my life around and became a contributing member of society at that point. Children, if I was sleeping, they would get a broom and touch my toes. Not They wouldn't touch me personally because I'd come up swinging. Uh, the little stuff like that. I mean, I was at a track meet and the gun went off for the 100 meter, and I'm on the ground looking around, and everybody, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. Thought I saw something. Anyway, it's startle reflexes, 4th of July, uh, uh, crowds. Back in those days, after I had the kids, I would only go grocery shopping at night, so there was less people. I didn't like to go anywhere where I was in a crowd because I couldn't control the situation. I'm thinking that's what I was thinking. And Cindy will tell me today that whenever we're anywhere, I am constantly, checking the AO out, and I try to keep my back to a wall, just little stuff that's still there.
The thing is now, after all these years, there's no more rivalries. There's no more pointing the finger. Back in the old days, if something went wrong, we were just kids back then. We blamed somebody for something that happened. We were just, we were just kids, really. We acted like kids a lot, and the blame game was always working back then. Now, none of that. It's all gone. It's just completely. I'll give you one example. We had a black guy in the company, one of the few black guys in the company. His name was Hauser. And he went out on a mission when I first got there. He lost two men. And one of them was my best friend. My best friend, I had been with him almost a year. His name was Norman Stoddard. But anyway, he lost two men. And a rumor went around the company that he had allowed the guys to smoke just before the helicopter was going to pick them up. And what happened was the smoke, it went through the jungle, and the enemy sniffed it out, and they attacked him, and he lost two men, and they blamed him for the loss. But now we didn't even know this smoke rumor was true. It was just a rumor. But this guy was hounded out of the company. Excuse me. Everybody was mad at him. They blamed him for the two men. It's really bad. So he ended up quitting the company, getting transferred. He felt bad about losing the men, real as bad as anybody. And he denied the smoke thing, but it was just, it just went around as a rumor. And so he showed up at a reunion 25 years later. And I'll never forget it. We hadn't seen him since the day he left the company. He came walking in, and everybody saw him, and they gave him a great reception. They went over, patted him on the back and everything. He broke down in tears. He cried his eyes out for about an hour. He was just overcome with emotion that everybody now would accept him back in the fold. And no one was blaming him for anything. And he was back with his Ranger brothers. It was very emotional for him. So he was been carrying this for so many years. Yeah? And it just all came out just like that.
Everybody that I've talked to wanted to mention is our brotherhood. Uh, it was kind of ironic that when I told the guys, and by the guys, I mean guys that I talked to quite a bit, my good friends, what is if I'm to speak in front of you, what would you like me to make sure that people know? And they all said our brotherhood. That was the word that, and it's quite a deal. We we are very, very close, in ways that are, in some instances, much closer than family. We're that became our family at a very young age. We were thrown into the fire very early in our lives. My
The saying, thank you for your service. We never heard that when we came back. I never heard that at all until many, many, many years later. And it was after 9/11. Things kind of changed after 9/11. The only good thing that came out of that was people started to respect first responders and military guys. They never gave them a thought before them. But after 9/11 happened, that's when that thing about thank you for your service came about. People started, it woke them up a little bit about, gee, we've been, kind of taking these guys for granted all these years. So I remember the first time I heard it, I was in DC going to one of those memorial services at the wall, and a girl ran across the street. A young lady ran across the street and asked me, "Are you going to the memorial there? Were you a Vietnam veteran?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." She goes, "I thank you for your service." She started shaking my hand. It was the first time I ever heard it. And I was kind of taken aback. I go, "Wow, what was that all about?" She ran across the street just to shake my hand. That's something that never happened before.
I'm so thankful that I got into see a lady. Her name is Pat Chandler, and she worked at the Portland Veterans Administration, and she was my counselor, and she tore me down and built me back up and got me into journaling and writing. And I'm a pretty good writer, and I've got a poem that I wrote right up here in front of me.
Have this theory that I've experienced through life that the people who have been through hell or just horrible things in their life, not just war, but other things, they're this if they can survive and they get over, get beyond and not be like I'm such a victim or I'm just so messed up. They're the heroes. They're the most amazing, strongest people that I know. And it's just baffling and so wonderful how these people like you can go through stuff and then rise above and not become a victim, but a victor and become a better, stronger person for it.
Well, you should, because I always thought, I went through some real tough days there. Remember, I was mentioned that it was 12 days with that line company even before I got to the Rangers. It rained all 12 days out in the field. It rained. I was soaked to the bone all 12 days. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even think. And I was thinking, if I ever get out of here, I'll just think I'll never have another bad day again. I never will, because how can it get worse than this? And guess what, Kathy? It never has, as a matter of fact. That doesn't mean I haven't gone through trials and tribulations, everything in my civilian life. We all do. But when you really analyze it, I've never had it as bad as those 12 days in the rain out there. Well, we were getting hit every day by the enemy too, on top of it. So that was a real. When I think of it now, I remember all I wanted was to be dry. That's all I wanted. I would have sold my soul to be in a hotel room, dry, watching television and eating a cheeseburger and having a cup of coffee. I would have sold my soul just for that. That's how bad things were. So, in that, when you really analyze, you never really can have another bad day like that again, ever. So when things are going bad, you can always refer back to that day in the jungle where you were really wet and just as about as miserable as you could possibly be.
If it's okay, I would like to read. There's 18 guys, and I feel like I owe them this little time of whatever you want to call it. But Norman Stoddard, Richard Drapp, Lieutenant James Smith, Stephen England, Gabe Trujillo, Richard L. Martin, Lieutenant Paul Sawtell, James McLaughlin, Leonard Trumbley, Johnny Sly, James Champion, Gary Cochran, Joel Hankins, Stephen Ellis, David Hayward, Charles Sanchez, Johnny Chapman, and Herschel Cood. Those are the 18 guys that I knew that didn't get to come home.